When the only notion constant is change, when information is obtainable with a single click of the mouse or a tap of a screen, humans seem to be at the center of it all, making them in sync with the changes, in constant motion. This is not limited to those living in cities whose hands seldom part with their gadgets. In rural areas, the innovations and discoveries in technologies are used to ease lives and bridge gaps in knowledge, skills, and practices. With the new knowledge and information being created, reproduced, and shared at a rapid pace, people constantly need to retool themselves to keep up with continuously changing work requirements. In today's digital age, people need to learn how to learn and learn anywhere and anytime. The University of the Philippines Open University, the fifth constituent unit of the University of the Philippines system, provides opportunities for people to pursue further studies through open and distance e-learning. In February 23, 1995, the University of the Philippines Open University was established. It is mandated to provide Filipinos all over the world wider access to quality higher education through open and distance e-learning, or ODEL. UPOU now offers various degree programs to learners located in more than 70 countries all over the world. These programs are under the Faculty of Education, the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, and the Faculty of Management and Development Studies. UPOU also offers continuing education courses and massive open and distance e-learning courses. UPOU uses various information and communication technologies, computer programs and applications to deliver instructional content and connect teachers and learners all over the world. Now more than ever, UPOU continues to transcend borders and break barriers through constant generation of knowledge and open exchange of ideas. It persistently tries new mechanisms to reach a larger number of learners. It perseveres in mentoring learners who shall be change agents, equipped to participate in the co-creation of knowledge for the benefit of Filipino communities everywhere. True to its mission, UPOU shall continue to reinvent itself to provide 21st century education in an increasingly open world.
The UPOU Networks is the repository of educational resources that are produced by the University of the Philippines Open University. The UPOU Networks has the following sections: UPOU Commons, UPOU Live, and UPOU Mix. The UPOU Commons contains open educational resources in different formats, including videos on various topics. UPOU Commons also has On Record, which contains podcast or audio stream version of the videos. Publications has e-journals, books and coffee table books, monograph series, and resource-based course package. All the educational resources in UPOU Commons have the Creative Commons license. UPOU Live features the webinars and university events streamed on real time. It has the online chat that gives viewers the chance to interact with the featured speakers. UPOU Mix, on the other hand, contains multimedia productions of the university that are copyrighted. To access UPOU networks, go to networks.upou.edu.ph.
Hello everyone. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Medyo matagal tayong umabsent sa masterclass. Tama ba? Medyo na-miss ko itong ating ginagawa ngayon. So, good afternoon everyone. I am M. Samoloza, your MC for this afternoon. And together with me is Paula Bautista. Hi, Pau.
Hello po. Hello everyone. Good afternoon.
Yes, today's masterclass will tackle knowledge management for development, also known as KM4D. Now, if you have attended any of our master classes lecture before, you know the general flow of things. So today's master class will be a little different from how we usually do things. Would you like to elaborate on what our participants can expect this afternoon, Pao?
Sure po, Doc Ems. For today, all of our participants are in for a treat because we have 3 people who are very knowledgeable and have vast experience in KM. So along with our thought leader, Dr. Alexander Flor, we also invited 2 reactants who will be providing additional insights on the Banos brand of KM. We have Assistant Professor Winifredo B. Dagli from the UPLB College of Development Communication, Department of Science Communication, and Mr. Benedict Giuliano, the manager of the London Stock Exchange Group's KM Central Strategy and Editorial.
Thank you, Pao. So medyo star-studded tayo this afternoon, ano? Hi, Dr. Flor, Sir Winnie, Sir Benedict. Of course, we are looking forward to hearing your insights later on. Pao?
Doc Ems, mukhang yung topic po natin for today really piqued the interest of a lot of people. So right before we went live, yung number po of registered participants was 345 na po.
Okay, you're right, Paula. So today's topic is really interesting and marami yung I'm sure mag-agree sa sinasabi natin. I just saw the registration sheet and I'm really happy to see the number is still growing. So let's take a few minutes to acknowledge our participants' affiliations, which are being flashed through the screen right now. So apologies, but we won't be able to read each institution's name out loud because of the sheer amount of participants who registered. Pao?
Aside po from our students and alumni, we also have participants from the ABS-CBN, ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, College of Arts and Sciences of Asia and the Pacific, Department of Education, Dago University, TESDA, Siquijor State College, Ateneo de Davao University, and University of Baguio.
Mga suki na natin yan, Pao.
We also want to acknowledge the participants joining us and watching through Facebook Live, YouTube, and the UPOU networks. So we encourage everyone to participate in the lecture. So just kindly send your questions, your comments through the chat box and comment section po.
Okay, and with all that said, let's get the show on the road. Let me start by introducing one of the co-proponents of the FICS Masterclass lecture series. Isa ito sa mga tradisyon natin dito sa Masterclass. Siyempre, ang ating partner, si Mr. Jerry Donato, is a current BCom student, soon to be doctor. He is the entertainment sub-editor of the Philippine Star and was the previous president of the UPOU Alumni Foundation Inc. So kaya po merong masterclass ngayon. Siya po yung isa sa mga dahilan. Sir Jerry, please say a few words about the FICS Masterclass lecture series.
Hi everyone. Thanks Emma. Actually, si Em is the other co-proponent of this project. Okay, good afternoon everyone. Allow me to say something briefly about the lecture. Masterclass is a series of lectures to be given by experts and academics from the fields of development communication, mass communication, and communication. It continues the tradition that thinkers have started, that is giving the public expert discussions. It features a thought leader who will share his or her expertise on a given topic with, of course, the participants. A thought leader teaches concepts related to the topic and provides practical uses to the context of the participants. So the entire lecture will be recorded for posterity, and it will be shared with other communities of scholars and learners. So with that, Masterclass intends to preserve and capture the knowledge of thought leaders for future reference and usage. UP Professor Emeritus and UP Scientist Dr. Felix Librero and UP Professor Emeritus and UP Scientist Dr. Alexander Flor were the first ever thought leaders of the lecture series. Again, good afternoon to all.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear how the FICS Masterclass got its start. So thank you so much for that introduction, Sir Jerry. Now, allow us to introduce our thought leader. As I've always been saying, ito po yung pinakamalaking challenge sa akin whenever I have to introduce this man. And since we are talking KM4D history, I decided to introduce him by sharing with you some backstories. Kinakabahan na siguro si Sir, ano? Sir Sandy, kinakabahan ka na ba? I have known him for more than 30 years now. So yes, for that long na. He was my professor during my undergraduate sa UPLB. Ito po yung time na si Sir Sandy ay super sikat sa campus sa UPLB po yun. Specifically sa Institute of Development Communication, UPLB. Opo, institute pa po ang DevCom that time. And among the IDC, we call it IDC students, si Sir Sandy po ang crush ng bayan. That time po, wala pa ang KM4D. My next encounter with Sir Sandy was when he became the Vice Chancellor for Research and Development dito po sa UPOU during the early 2000 and later became our Dean in 2004. He was actually the founding Dean of the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. But before he became our Dean, he served as the head of the Sierra KM unit. Please correct me, sir, if I'm wrong. And then nagkita po ulit kami sa isa sa mga classrooms sa College of Development Communication. So that time, college na po siya. I was an MS student at prof ko po ulit siya sa KM course. At hindi ko po makakalimutan yung pinakaunang pinagawa niya sa amin, sa aming mga students niya that time. Sir Sandy, natatandaan mo po ba yon? He asked us to Google search our names. Kaya yan po yung ginawa ko kanina for this introduction. I searched KM4D. Pwede nyo din pong itry. Ang pinakauna pong lalabas ay ang chapter ng book ni Sir Sandy sa IGI Global Publication titled What is Knowledge Management? That alone speaks for itself. Medyo nag-backstories lang po tayo ng konti kasi ang storytelling po ay isa sa mga kailangang matutunan ng ating mga KM practitioners. Kaya without further marites, ladies and gentlemen, former classmates, KM teachers and students, at sa lahat ng mga kamarites natin dyan, it is with pride that I introduce to you our thought leader this afternoon, the father of KM4D in the Philippines, none other than Professor Emeritus Dr. Alexander G. Flor. Sir Sandy.
Yeah, maraming salamat, Ems. Maraming salamat, Jerry, Pao. Ems, pinababata mo naman ang sarili mo kasi naging estudyante kita 40 years ago. Sa aking pagkakaalala, that was in 1983, I think.
Sir, hindi ha. Hindi, 1988 na, sir.
Oh, ganun ba?
Patawad ng konti.
Okay. Of course, kung mas maniniwala kayo kay Ems kaysa sa akin in terms of memory kasi mine is slipping rapidly. And this is one of the reasons why we are having this master class. No, kasi, well, hindi parang I have been remiss in many things, no? And one of this is, I'm not practicing what I preach when it comes to knowledge management, the institutional memories that we have regarding KM or KM4D, they have not been documented. I tried in vain in the past years, beginning with this, with this book. Baliktad ba yung dating sa inyo nito o
Tama po,
nababasa
sir.
ba?
Okay po siya. Okay po siya.
Okay. This is a 2019 product of our ano nga ibig sabihin na API?
Academic program improvement.
Yeah.
Yes, po.
KM4D Casebook, Sectoral and Thematic Knowledge Management in the national, regional, and global levels. And this actually documents the KM4D projects or undertakings that we have been involved in since the late 90s, no? And this book is well, it's open access. You may download it for free in our UPOU repository later on when I baka pwede na ngayon. Ayan. Is this the link, Ariel, that you posted in our chat box? See, I requested our staff, specifically Gian, to post the link for this book. If you're interested, it's downloadable for free, and it gives comprehensive cases on well, the reason why we are having KM4D is because of this concept of horizontalization. We would want to bring to bear knowledge for the benefit of countries that are down there, yung tinatawag nating Global South. And the first chapter of this book actually gives some, kita niyo yung picture ni Dr. Umadi, no? At saka yung circa, no? Circa. Kaya nga natutuwa po tayo na nandito ngayon ang manager ng circa knowledge management unit na si Benedict, who will be reacting to what will be shared with you this afternoon, no? Of course, we are also thankful for the presence of Assistant Professor Winifredo Dagli, who is currently teaching knowledge management at the College of Development Communication. Okay, so both institutions were intimately involved in KM4D, or in the start of KM4D, although hindi pa KM4D ang tawag namin noon, no? Pero kung nasa chat box na ba natin, Gian, yung link that they could use to download this. Actually, it's also downloadable sa ResearchGate at saka sa academia, no? Pwedeng download to. Pero the reason why I'm showing this book is dito sa dedication, ayan. Ang nakalagay nga dito for my mentors, Felix Librero and Serafin Talisayon. Okay? For my mentors, Felix Librero and Serafin Talisayon. Siguro, some of you are wondering na ito, medyo may edad na itong taong ito, pero meron pa rin siyang mentor. Well, knowledge management would not have started if it weren't for Felix Librero. Kasi he was the one who inspired me to go into informatization, into the information age, into the knowledge age, so to speak. As a young PhD coming from Indiana University, he brought with him a lot of materials And the one which attracted me the most was a documentary on public broadcasting, over the public broadcasting system of the US, titled The Information Society, featuring the theoretician, okay, the information economist Mark Porat. It was his documentary, and I viewed that documentary in 1978, I think, for several times, close to 10 times, no? And while each time I viewed it, I was forming in my mind what was going to be my dissertation, which was eventually the information rich and the information poor, two phases of the information age in the developing country, which was funded by Simeo Cerca during the early 80s. Now, Dr. Talisayon, on the other hand, was one of my committee members, along with Dr. Florangel Braid of the Asian Institute of Journalism and Dr. Gabriel Iglesias of the UP College of Public Administration, who was the policy expert in that group. Gino Ables was also part of the group of my advisory committee. Many believe that, well, they associate Dr. Talisayon as my mentor in knowledge management, but we came upon KM from different perspectives, from different paths, no? And this would, I think this would explain our differences in approach, no? Dr. Talisayon came upon KM from the conventional, the Harvard generated papers and books on knowledge creation and Davenport and Prusak's KM. In my case, I came upon it via the East-West Center, where I took my, that was my first stop for my Fulbright postdoc in 1989. And I'll tell you about that later, because this presentation is all about that. Okay, and so we're having this masterclass with hopes that it could be these backstories, these insights, lessons learned, for want of documentation, will have a record, no, and may eventually be transcribed for posterity. Allow me to share my screen. So my name is Alexander Flor, and I'm with the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. I'm scheduled to retire by July 5 of this year, but I will still be with the university on a different capacity. No? And I'm going to talk about KM4D Institute, Knowledge Management Listed, Backstories on the Los Banos brand of knowledge management. There was a time when it was only this acronym, KM4D, was only being used by people from this particular campus of the university. And well, by way of an introduction, what we're trying to do here is to set the record straight, or to put on record institutional memories and things that we don't discuss in our KM courses, no, here at UPOU and sa UPLB nun. And this is not entirely ancient history, pero kung judging by my age, baka akalain nyo nga gano'n, ano? 20 years ago, October of 2023, Circa invited me to serve as one of their speakers for the ADSS, yung Agricultural Development Seminar Series. This was the first of 3 ADSS lectures that I gave from, no, this should read, pasensya na, this should read October of 2003. So this is 20 years ago, 2003. And I made a presentation, or I gave a presentation, the title of which was Knowledge Management in Los Banos, Who Will Bear the Torch? I had reason to make this presentation. Actually, I was also appealing to different groups within the campus to take on this torch because I was about to let go of it then. In October of 2022, I left Circa to join or to rejoin the university as M said, as its Vice Chancellor for Research and Development in UPOU, no? And my focus then was on, administrative things. Hindi na ako yung magtuturo ng KM sa Institute of Development Communication noon. Kasi while I was at Circa, I was still able to teach KM at DevCom. For the record, I was already retired from the university in December of 2000. No? Kasi nga I joined Circa on a full-time basis to start its knowledge management program. No? But 2 years later, 2002, Felix Librero felt that he could use my help as his vice chancellor. And so I was recalled back to the university, and hanggang ngayon, I'm still teaching with the university. Okay, so ano po ito? This is a typo, October 20, 2003. My question then, knowledge management in Los Banos, who will bear the torch? I remember that during my lecture at the Circa DL Umali Auditorium, Dr. Nora Quebral was there, no? Nandoon siya. Tapos yung towards the end, question and answer period. Yun na nga, okay, so give me an answer, sinasabi sa akin, who will bear the torch? Wala naman dun sa mga taga DevCom who were in attendance then, nagbo-voluntaryo, no? Tapos at the same time, during that time, I think the vacant pa rin yung yung naiwan ko na pwesto sa Circa. And the officer in charge was our colleague Alice Rillo, who was a librarian. No? Ang training niya was information sciences. And she kept mum throughout the presentation. Okay, but just for the record, this is my narrative. This is my own personal narrative, and it may be, affected by my aging brain cells. And so the input of our reactants, Dr. Dudley and Benedict, are most welcome. No? Go ahead and contradict me. Go ahead and provide a separate explanation, to clarify things. That would be definitely welcome. Benedict represents Circa, as I said, and Winnie represents the College of Development Communication, which were the main actors when knowledge management for development was introduced here in the country, and I believe in Southeast Asia. And so, well, my person, meron kaming tinatawag noon, the turn of the millennium, or si Roger Cuino ang nito personal KM. let's say, knowledge management, how do we apply it personally in our daily lives? And my answer to him then was, doon sa Microsoft Suite, ang pinaka-KM tool mo doon really is the Explorer. I'm not referring to Internet Explorer, but the Explorer app, where you manage, where you classify, where you put to certain folders all your files. Hindi ba? Di ba? Yung that Explorer app. And well, that part of KM, personal KM, I was able to practice in the sense that all my digital output, no, documents, PowerPoint presentations, videos, and so on, hanggang ngayon, they are categorized, classified, and all intact. And so I could show you some of these very old documents ngayon, no, this afternoon as evidence. So let me see. Yeah, I am dividing this presentation into 6 parts. Hindi naman masyadong mahaba kasi ang idea nga natin dito parang more of a panel discussion among the 3 of us, Winnie, Benedict, and myself, no. But this so-called history, personal history, preceded KM by 6 years. Yes, 6 years before the term knowledge management was introduced. And it began at the East-West Center. Nabanggit ko po nga kanina. You see, upon being admitted to the Fulbright program, I immediately chose the East-West Center for a couple of reasons. First is that we have a very active futures research group at the University of Hawaii, which is actually the East-West Center is within the University of Hawaii campus. And I also know for a fact that the person who developed the framework, which I used, the theoretical framework, which I used in my dissertation, Johan Galtung, was retired there as an adjunct professor. And my area, the area that I picked, was informatization. And so they assigned me to Dr. Sumie Konoshima. Dr. Sumie Konoshima maintained the library of the information of the Institute for... there's something, I think, whose microphone is on. Could you please switch it off? Okay, so Sumi Konoshima, she was the one who was maintaining the library of the Institute of Culture and Communication of the East-West Center. Her area of expertise is information science, specifically information systems for public policy. And so she introduced me to the US. It was a very developed public sector or government sector information system where much of the information that you required may be accessed, downloaded then, but printed, printed on reams of paper, several reams of paper. I brought home kilos, almost a ton of paper when I got back from that postdoc stint. Also, my other supervisor was he was not really my supervisor, but he participated in my mentorship. His name is Dr. Syed Rahim. His expertise is informatization. But I learned so much from this scholar, Dr. Meru Jusawala. She was a second generation information economist. If some of you may know, at least my students would know that knowledge economics began in Europe during the 1930s. And when it was exported to the US, the Americans called it differently. They gave it the name information economics, because they felt that knowledge was there was so much baggage in that word. So they called it information economics. And Meru was second generation. You could parang ka-level siya ni na Mark Pora. No? And my exposure to their views, to their methods of work, to their thinking led to this output for my postdoc. It was a paper titled "The Informatization of Agriculture." No. Noon ang UP, ang Institute of Development Communication was still under the UPLB College of Agriculture. So this was actually my area. And this was published in the Asian Journal of Communication, Web of Science, 1993. Towards the end of my interactions with them. Okay. So the second part of this narrative was circa 1998-2000. Into 1998, Dr. Hilsa Gigit, who headed the research department of CIRCA, invited me to take on the post which was vacated by Dr. Josephine Sison of the Information Resources Development Program. You will read in this book how CIRCA pioneered in agricultural information databases, and how the first director of CIRCA, Dr. Dioscoro Umali, had this vision all along of knowledge management for development. Now, Dr. Josephine Sison was engaged by the UP School of Information and Library Science as its dean. And so she had to leave CIRCA, Information Resources Development Program, and somebody had to take over. Kahit na interim lang, I was still with DevCom doon, so I came in. And on a part-time basis, with thoughts of my being able to help Dr. Sagigit and CIRCA. Now, during our interface, meaning Josie, Sison, and myself, she intimated something to me which I found quite intriguing, Kasi during that time, 1998, interest and funding in information resources were going down in databases, in information bases in agriculture. They were going down. Prior to that, CIRCA was the hub in Southeast Asia of FAO, yung AGRIS, carry system. Tapos rin siya, based ng AIBA. But it was, slowly losing some of its support from agencies such as IDRC. And she told me that, IRDP, that's the Information Resources Development Program, would need to die in order to live. A few months later, when we renamed this as the Knowledge Management Program, modeled after the Knowledge Management Program of the World Bank, and we started getting support, and projects, then I knew what she meant. It became apparent what she meant. We communicated with Stephen Denning of the World Bank, and then tried to do our version of KM, which is really quite different from the Davenport-Prusak models, from the Nonaka Takeuchi books. No, the reason became very apparent since we weren't doing KM for Circa as an organization. We were doing KM for the natural resources management sector. Okay. So this is something which is not in traditional knowledge management, sectoral KM. And thematic KM, poverty, for instance, is a development theme. Okay. Now, conventional KM, at least the KM that was proposed in 1995 dealt with corporations, with private entities, with profit-making institutions. And so the domain of knowledge that was managed was limited to those entities, to those corporations, which was quite, manageable, doable. But if we talk about poverty in Southeast Asia or natural resources management in Southeast Asia, the diversity of sources, actually the number of sources itself would grow exponentially. It would be even the complexity of what library scientists would call ontologies, of your KM domain. How complicated all these concepts or constructs would be, how difficult it would be to categorize and to situate, documents or tacit and not explicit knowledge, documented knowledge in those categories, not to mention tacit knowledge. Okay. So our very first activities then, we had a couple of GIS specialists, but we called ours as geospatial information systems. We did poverty maps, as beginning points. Okay, and in 2001, we came out with 3 books. In 2002, that is. E-Development and Knowledge Management, which came out in 2001, which contained this paper titled, what was it again? Information and Poverty, the indisputable link, of course, but the link is inverse to information and poverty. Okay, the inverse link between these two, and this was followed by digital tools for process documentation, where we try to make specific categories for information systems or data bases, information bases, and knowledge bases, followed by ethnovideography, indigenous knowledge management systems, published also in 2002. I believe that these books are still for sale in Circa. And we then, in 2002, we call this as our KM trilogy. Usap kasi yung Lord of the Rings nun okay, part 3 of this narrative is the UPLB-CA. CA stands for College of Agriculture, Institute of Development Communication, as the knowledge management program of Circa was being established. We at the Institute of Development Communication, by we, I mean Professor Ila Virginia Contado Onquico, Ivy, and I were planning for a course on KM. And this was brought about by, this is the title of the course, DevC 152, Principles of Knowledge Management wala pang KM4D nun eh. And it was approved by our University Council in 1998. No? Pero with some difficulty, no? With some contentious debates in the curriculum committee. No? There were very senior professors from the College of Forestry who did not feel that it was appropriate for us to have a course that claims to manage knowledge. No? Kasi nga yun, it's a very loaded term. I could remember Professor Franco, Professor Revilla. These are very senior guys. Yale trained si Dr. Revilla. At any rate, after some debates in the curriculum committee of UPLB, it was approved, and we offered it as a lecture lab major course under the science communication cluster. Now, the reason was we divided our majors then at DevCom as educational communication, community communication, which included broadcasting and community newspapers. No, strategic communication, which was headed by myself, and science communication. Si Ivy ang head ng science communication nun. Wala silang courses wala silang majors. So sabi niya, dito na lang yan, yung KM. I'll show you. Exit muna ako dito. And pwede siguro, show you the course outline here for, am I sharing my screen correctly? Ito ata. Could you see this now? No?
Okay na po.
Oo. Ito, course analysis ng Development Communication 152. Ito yung pumasa sa University Council in 1998. And kita nyo, hindi pa KM4 dito, no? But compared to other KM courses that were offered elsewhere, kahit na sa US, ito meron na tayong enumerate development applications of KM and the projects associated with these. No? We were applying na KM to development projects. No? Tumatawag Okay, so ito hindi siya dated So I'm unable to show that, pero maybe you should see how the course was structured. No? Introduction to KM, the environment for knowledge management, KM terminology, the transdisciplinary nature of KM. We were using transdisciplinary as early as then, and theoretical foundation, cybernetic systems theory, organizational communication, information economics, knowledge networking. Nandito na yung certificate net namin nun development application case studies. And we had 16 exercises for our lab sessions. So bale, ganun na yun, 2 hours lecture per week, 3 hours lab. No? And my lab instructor then was Remy De Leon. Do you remember Remy, Ems?
Yes,
Remy.
sir. Classmate po.
And during that time nga, madami kaming debate nun ni Remy. Kasi he was doing my the lab session. I was doing the lecture, and at times we contradicted ourselves when it came to Davenport's prerequisites of KM. Because as many of you know, knowledge management in an organization has three prerequisites. One is the environment for knowledge sharing, or the organizational culture. The next is yung meaning, the ontologies itself, yung, the knowledge domain. Tapos pangatlo, yung technology. Now, Remy didn't believe that technology should be a prerequisite. Kasi sabi nga niya, which was right, when we share stories, diba, storytelling, which was one of the focus, or yung isa sa mga focus ng KM4D. We don't need technology. He was right, of course, but in my the way my sense was, it's more of the McLuhan technological materialism framework, that the moment we started writing, technology na yun di ba? Nung oral tradition pa lang, which is storytelling, of course, wala pa yun. Wala pa. Pero, the moment we started writing, making use of communication, symbols and so on, technology na yun. Okay. Now, also, the fourth part is okay. The fourth part is nakaka-distract pala ito. Papatayin ko na lang po para yun tayo baka kasi isa sa inyo yung tumatawag sa akin dito si M siguro. Is there something that I need to be wala, puro naman good afternoon na nandito sa sa chat box wala namang really asking for my attention. Anyway, part 4, Asian Institute of Journalism. Okay, let me introduce you to the current president of AIJC, and this was Ramon Tuazon. He ayaw po talagang paawat, kaya hello. Yes, sandali lang po. Ano po yun?
Sir, naririnig ka namin
Yun na nga wala akong magagawa. Bossing, meron akong teka, hindi ko maano yung mute ko. Boss, sino to?
So habang nakikipag-usap po si Sir sa kanyang ka-phone pal, meron po tayong mga participants nandito sa chat box. So from Siquijor State College, from Negros Oriental State University and Isabela State College. Meron din ditong message si Sir Benedict na may mga links siya that lead to Dr. Flores 3 KM books published by Circa. So they are now free daw, sabi ni Sir Benedict. Okay. Sir, okay ka na po? Nakamute ka, sir.
Ayan, unmute myself. Oh, yeah, that's very good. That's very good news, Benedict, that it's now open access, no? Kasi may copyright nga ata yun Oh, so that's good. Well, as I was saying, in 2004, the Asian Institute of Journalism decided to offer KM also. And so they requested me to put together a course and to teach it. And I'm sure that EMS would remember that every Friday afternoon, we would go to AIGC after our weekly visit to Diliman so that I can handle this course. No, it's after office hours ng Friday. And let me just show you the course outline which we prepared for AIJC then. This was 2004, take note. Let me just enlarge this a bit. Yeah, this course syllabus. Sa Annapolis pa to nun, EMS, if you remember, no? Kasama natin si Ethan. KM, pero pinasukan na rin natin ito ng KM4D. No? Yeah. Many of this was inspired by Apin's work, no? But marami din na yung sa circa na. For instance, ICT and poverty, field research, development assistance, no? Yan. Okay. Yeah. Okay, stop share ko lang to, no? And let's go back to the presentation. Malapit na matapos, moms and sirs, don't you worry. Okay, it was, Ramon was instrumental in introducing KM into the curriculum, of the communication degrees or programs offered nationally, no? So kasi siya yung, he was a member of, if not the chair, of the CHED Technical Panel for Communication Education. And so he proposed KM using the course outlines that we did for DevCom and for AIJC as the model, but eventually I think they changed it, no? So he was really responsible for this, and we should give him credit. Okay, now part 5 is BAM's DCOM here at UPOU, and it began 2010, no? Kasi nga in between 2002 hanggang 2010, I wasn't teaching KM other than yung sa AIJC, no? But here, when we initiated, proposed, and eventually offered the Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies, one of its courses was Knowledge Management for Development, KM4D, yeah, which is what EMS is, Dr. Amaloza is teaching or has been teaching since last year, no? And even prior to last year, she was my tutor, no? So, yun ang ginagawa ni EMS. Tapos, there was time when Dr. Melinda Lumanta and I were, hindi ko recall kung teaching o parang nag-aalinhinan kami dun sa DCOM course on KM titled Information and Knowledge Management. Okay. Prior to 2010, Dr. Melinda Lumanta and Dr. Jean Saludades mentored under Professor Nonaka of in Japan. Professor Nonaka, as many of you know, was the co-author or the lead author of the book The Knowledge Creating Company, which actually began KM, no? While serving as a visiting professor at Harvard University, he linked up with another Japanese management specialist, and his name is Takeuchi, Professor Takeuchi. And they presented their theses on knowledge creating companies. They were speaking of corporations and private companies. Mendy and Jean mentored under Professor Nonaka, and unfortunately we had these debates on the phrase knowledge creation because kay Professor Nonaka knowledge creating company. Pwede muna mag-CR break, Ems?
Sige, sir. Go
Oh,
lang.
sige, paano na lang muna, no?
Yes.
Hindi ko makakontrol itong screen ko eh. Tsaka please switch it off first. No, so that I could stand up. Baka mamaya makita pa yung shorts ko eh. Sige na, Alex or whoever, please
Okay,
switch off
MC,
my...
please.
Yeah, thank you.
So may commercial muna tayo. Sige, meron tayong, I think we have 87 audience sa ating Facebook Live. So mga estudyante, no, nakakatuwa naman. So sige, tingnan natin yung iba. Oh, may student ako dito, Papin. Hello. And we also have someone from Sikihor nga kanina. Mukhang marami tayong mga taga Sikihor na na students joining us. Si Wendell, Roy Amantiad. We also have Gemabel o Humawan. And Mark Vincent Mbak. Mukhang magkakaklase itong mga to, no? So, meron din tayo from isa pang taga Sikihor, si Carl Ian Pakibot. So, nice to see you here. At dito sa ating Zoom, okay, may mga nagchat-chat, ano? So, from Central Luzon State University, si Jabi.
Andito na ako. Sorry.
Okay. So, tapos na ang commercial natin.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah. Okay. Start my video. I had a delivery dumating yung mesh ko. This is very important to us, di ba? I just had to go on. Apologies once again. As I was saying, and I hope you could hear me, there were debates about the use of the term knowledge creation. Kasi nga, kaya na introduce yung term na knowledge management. May mga scientists there were academics who refused to use the word creation. According to them, from a philosophical point of view, knowledge cannot be created. I mean, it cannot, kasi creation means, it's like creating something from nothing, di ba? Ganon. So, instead of knowledge creation, they started using knowledge management. Okay, if you want to debate with me regarding this, well, pwede. Prior to this also, 2008, this was Dr. Emily Amulos's master's thesis. She developed a knowledge capture algorithm, which prior to this time, walang ganon. And eventually, we made use of this knowledge capture algorithm in a number of projects, that circa commissioned us to do from 2010 to 2016, the first one was the EU Indigenous Knowledge Systems Project. Yan, ginamit namin ito, yung knowledge capture algorithm ni EMS, And then we also had this DA BAR Capacity Development Project, which ran for maybe 3 years, and 2 years for knowledge management and the science of delivery. This resulted in a publication. We partnered with Dr. Talisayon in this project. Okay. Ngayon naman, yes, it was also during this time when we developed this typology of KM, conventional KM and KM4D. Ito yung binabanggit ni EMS na if you Google KM4D, ito yung unang lalabas. Ito yung chapter in a book. This table is contained in that particular chapter. Differentiate the purpose of conventional KM and KM4D, differentiated in terms of purpose, considerations, thrust, levels of utilization, functionalities or applications, and so on and so forth. And a number of times I've been saying that we need to revise this kasi this is circa 2017. This was developed 2017. Okay, now part 6. Ngayon ito, Reimagining KM4D, and our actors here would be the UPOU Faculty of Management and Development Studies, Dean Joanne, and the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. And I think that today, well, this is my second to the last slide. I think that today we are in a position to firm up KM4D as a separate science, and there are the distinctions between KM and KM4D are now pronounced, no? Yung practice natin in the past 20 years have highlighted the differences between these two, no? Tapos yung our experience has dictated KM4D. It is defined by our practice and not principles that we borrow from the private sector. So often, if you are doing knowledge management in the public sector, in the government sector, or in development agencies, you find that some of the things that are taught to you with regard to KM is not applicable to your work, no? And this is because iba yung iba yung context niya. Also, there is this growing recognition of indigenous and local knowledge, no? Lahat ng KM4D project should realign itself with the so-called global development goals. Ngayon, sustainable development goals, dati-dati Millennium Development Goals, no? And there is an international agreement among all agencies involved in development work that its activities, particularly KM4D, should be aligned with this development goals. Ang isang kaibahan din ng KM4D is that we have to have attribution, no? Impact and outcome attribution to knowledge interventions. Sa private sector, madali yung gawin ito kasi you could easily relate the bottom line or the increase in profits. You could relate that with knowledge interventions. Sa atin, we have a different set of outcomes. We're not in this for profit. We have a different set of outcomes dictated by the Sustainable Development Goals. It's so difficult to assign attribution to our knowledge interventions kasi it is not concrete. It's not something that it's not an object. It's not a concrete intervention. Okay? And then, ito na nga, yung mga technological disruptions natin ngayon, no? We have to adjust with these technological disruptors, including artificial intelligence, including the move towards Web 3.0, no? Yeah, this web paradigm shifts, no? And actually, we believe now that Web 3.0 is much more applicable to KM4D than it was in Web 2.0. And well, that requires a difference, another masterclass, if you will. No, but our initial step should be to shift from centralized to distributed knowledge content and emphasis on curation skills. Yes, plus our experience in the pandemic. So these are all the factors that should go into reimagining KM4D. And our work with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity has led to this columns here, no? Etong tingin namin, these are the competencies, the new competencies that knowledge management specialists who work in development agencies should have, no? Yung digital knowledge capture, EMS Amuloza, knowledge systematization. This is entirely, this is a field which you will not find in conventional KM. Ontology mapping, knowledge graphs, no? Knowledge networking, institutional, expert, and social networking. KM systems design, dati na to, but systems architecture, but we have to be consistent with yung the trends na nga ngayon eh. There's no need for on-premise servers, unlike during the early years. No? Pati yung we don't even need content management systems anymore. No? Very important skills would be knowledge presentation, storytelling, data visualization, infographics, audio. And so, kung meron man tayong talagang knowledge management office or unit, I think the responsibilities or the business, core business of that office would be this. Okay? Sandali lang po. Matay na akong dati. Design and development of your knowledge base, but this includes developing your knowledge graph or your ontology map, no? How you would categorize or where you situate your different knowledge resources under what categories. System architecture should bear in mind the trends now in the World Wide Web. Okay? You should be able to populate and maintain the knowledge base. The most important skill here, as far as I'm concerned, is curation, which was never the case in the past. Wala yung curation. No, this networking still remains to be a very important skill or a very important aspect of work, as well as the design and development of knowledge products, yung mga ginagawa ng mga taga-DevCom. Kasama na rin dito yung audience segmentation, visualization, writing, execution, etc. Okay, so this would be ACB and I, through a process, managed to enumerate this proposed updated KM4D functions or terms of reference, no? Okay, so if you're establishing a KM4D unit in your school or in your agency or in your project, then you should be able to plan, implement, monitor, and evaluate the KM program. So meron ka ng monitoring and evaluation skills. You should be able to administer, populate, maintain a knowledge base structured after an ontology map. Tinatawag natin knowledge graph of the domain, a body of knowledge covered by your project, your agency. And mga sa yung systems architecture. Then you should be able to capture, systematize, curate, tacit and explicit knowledge into storable, shareable, and reusable digital media. And you should be able to establish, administer, maintain electronic, institutional, and expert networks with partners and stakeholders. You should be able to visualize, write, and execute knowledge products, downloadable on accessible digital platforms, repositories, streaming services, etc. These are the terms of reference of the unit. It doesn't have to be associated with one person. No? It cannot be a one-man team doing this. No? Okay, it has to be a team, an honest-to-goodness team that would do these functions, right? Okay, so I will also show this particular slide. One of our KM thought leaders nowadays si Sari Azyut, no, prepared this slide on the future of KM. So you have new knowledge management tools. Hindi na yung mga content management systems like Joomla. These are more like databases like Airtable, for instance, and Notion, no, which Dean Diego has introduced to FICS. No, software such as MyMind. This you interface with the community's participation, specifically in the curation of materials that are up there, uploaded in the web. Okay, and this is how we manage knowledge, specifically knowledge for development. Okay. Decentralization and distribution trends, balik lang natin yan, brought about by emerging tech, no, and Web 3.0 will be a significant influence on future KM processes and practices. Okay, so we go back to, the intention of this masterclass, setting the record straight, on putting on record institutional memories and things that we don't discuss in our KM courses, and I hope we've been able to do that. No, yung KM4D casebook, it's downloadable. You may use it in your classes and in other, or just as plain reference. But I go back to my initial question, or my question in October of 2003. Knowledge management in Los Banos. Who will bear the torch? Well, it appears that FICS and FMDS will be bearing the torch from our end, and Benedict and his colleagues in Circa will be doing that on Circa's end. And we also have the participation of the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. The KM team of ACB is headed by Dr. Renee Lorica. Okay, I hope she's here. Okay, so ganito po, marami pong salamat sa ating staff ng Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, and I thank in advance the inputs of Winnie and Benedict, and I'm so sorry if I took so long. Sige po, maraming salamat po. Into na ako dito.
Maraming salamat, Sir Sandy, for sharing your KM4D backstories. So, basahin ko lang muna, Sir Sandy, may message sa inyo si Marilu Pitlo. Good morning. I think it's still morning there. So, Lu Pitlo from Taiwan, DevCom student UPOU. Prof. Sandy encouraged us to explore new research fields in our ASEAN 231 studies and posted mind-tickling questions, making us reflect critically on various pertinent topics within the field. And also, wag po kayong maniniwala kung sinasabi ni Sir na medyo may problema na siya sa memory. Sobrang tindi po ng memory niyan. Di ba, Sir? Nawala na si Sir. So mukhang kumukuha ulit ng Shopee, Sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Sir. So for those who have questions, hold on to them for just a bit. We shall address them later during our open forum. So for now, it's time for us to listen to what our reactants have to say. Let me first introduce Assistant Professor Winifredo B. Dagley. Assistant Professor Dagley has been teaching KM4D since 2010. Medyo matagal na pala, Sir Dagley, pero mukhang very young pa si Sir Winnie. His scholarly work spans various fields of interest, including participatory communication and the co-production of knowledge in agrarian and natural resource management, the interface of science and politics in agricultural development, rural innovation studies, and the interdisciplinary inquiry on social ecological transformations in the context of agri-food, systems, and climate change. Pao?
Yes, ma'am. He has also published reviews and empirical papers in journals such as the Frontiers in Sustainable Food Systems, Reflective Practice, International Journal of Communication, Philippine Social Science Review, and Saliksik Multidisciplinarium Journal, and book chapters with the UN Food and Agriculture Organization and Springer.
His current research examines the discourse and practice of transformational adaptation in the context of the coconut sector of the Philippines. He earned his MA in sociology at UP Diliman and is currently completing a doctoral degree in rural studies at the University of Guelph, Canada. Di ba mamaya magsasubmit ka na ng final manuscript mo, Sir Winnie? Take it away, sir.
Tama, Miss M. Thank you very much for the team, Miss M, Maria Paula, and of course, Sir Sandy. Thank you very much for doing this lecture. I really appreciate this. 2 months ago, I was actually sending messages to Dr. Benji Floor and of course Sir Sandy, asking them about some information about the history of DevCom 152 because after 5 years or more than 5 years na naka-study leave ako, I just returned to teaching and I'm teaching now DevCom 155. So it's the new label, the new name of DevCom 152. So it's now DevCom 155, Knowledge Management for Development. So KM4D na ang pangalan ng back in the days, DevCom 152, Principles of KM. So Sir Sandy, dahil nag-share kayo sa amin ng institutional memories, gusto kong dagdagan yan. Of course, hindi ako key player katulad ni Sir. And this is just from my perspective as a former student of Sir Sandy. So I was in his class back in, I'm not sure, sir, if it's in 2003 or 2004, when I was in the undergrad. And perhaps that was also the last time that you taught DevCom 152, if not the last, maybe, the last few semesters that you were with us here at the college. But I think you were an adjunct professor back then and on a second ment at Circa. I can still recall we were using that thin, short, yellow book. My memory tells me it's e-government, but now you reminded me it's e-development. So that was our textbook back in those days. And of course, just to let you know, when we entered this course, DevCom 152, lahat kami nakatulala in the first few sessions because, as you know, we were BS DevCom students, and before we take this course, we were taking communication courses. And yung DevCom 152, katulad nung nasabi ni Sir, buti na lang Sir nakalusot no sa council. It was a very technical course. And medyo mahirap siyang unawain at the beginning because hindi siya yung normal na communication course, no? And it doesn't really claim to be a communication course even. So it's like giving a support to what we're doing in DevCom and as future development communication practitioners. But despite that, maraming mga estudyante ang very much interested sa DevCom 152, and I've seen that myself years after when I started teaching DevCom 152. So sir, nung time na nandun ako sa klase ninyo, remember, Angel Flores, one of my classmates and a good friend of mine, and myself, we invited Daan Boom of ADB to come to Los Baños. So just for that to be part of this recorded, trip to the memory lane. And Sir Sandy was very surprised because hindi niya alam na in-invite namin si Daan Boom. We actually took the initiative as undergraduate students, and I want to emphasize that because some of my students in DevCom 155 are here now, listening to me. So we took the initiative of reaching out to Dan Boom of ADB, and surprisingly, he accepted the invitation. At nung nalaman ni Sir, ginawa niyang big symposium sa Circa, yung talk ni Dan Boom. It wasn't just here in DevCom, but it became like a big symposium on KM4D in Circa. And then
sponsored by our class, no? Sponsored by your class.
And it's not even part of the requirement, sir. I'm so proud of our class. So and it was because we were very interested about KM, no, for many good reasons. We were very interested about it, despite the fact that it's quite technical. And then, siguro, sir, you actually planted the seeds on me to pursue a career on KM. Because after I graduated from college, I didn't really pursue the conventional communication media work. So I got hired here at the college in a big regional program, isang bagsak all in CBNRM, Adaptive Learning and Linkages in Community-Based Natural Resource Management, wherein I was a project officer working with Dr. Selcadis. And back in those days, we were working with other 5 regional organizations, including Circa. And there are like more than 10 R&D organizations in agriculture in Southeast Asia participating in that program. And the partners, as well as Dr. Cadiz, asked me to come up with a KM system and a knowledge bank for the project. And of course, I was a newly grad back then. What I did was to equip myself with more knowledge and skills about KM. I actually joined the global KM4D network. So they just had this, nice wiki, and they had this listserv. So I joined that group, and that's where I got many of the things that I learned about KM4D. Even the name of the COP was KM4D. And I got the chance to go to Brussels to attend the KM4D event with Lucy Lamoureux and Sarah Cummings, that group, sir. And when I came back, Dr. Cadiz was already working at Circa, and they were able to invite Lucy and the team to organize this big knowledge sharing event for many Circa stakeholders. So that time, it was quite a different KM practice and KM theory, because it wasn't really organizational KM. It was focused more on knowledge sharing, external knowledge sharing with various stakeholder groups, development stakeholder groups. And so, very fascinated ako, sir, dun sa tradition na yon ng KM4Dev, focusing more on knowledge sharing, the co-production of knowledge, using both face-to-face methods as well as online tools. And I remember marami rin, sir, events sa ADB. They invited us, and most of our classes, we had field trips, educational trips to ADB, because they had this well-established KM unit as well. And they've been, producing, they're like a treadmill of materials on KM, yung mga tools, toolkits, etc., etc. So yun, sir, naalala ko. And of course, fast forward 2010, I got hired here in CDC under the Department of Science Communication. And of course, because of my background in KM, so I was one of the faculty members teaching the course along with Professor Gary Montemayor. So yun, sir. Kaya maraming salamat po sa pag-share. At least next semester, sir, and the semesters to come, meron na tayong maibabahagi sa mga klase natin about this Los Banos brand of KM. So although I also cited the KM4D source book that you showed us, there were, lots of interesting historical insights from that book. But definitely marami kayo, sir, na na-share na bago ngayong hapon. So maraming salamat, sir, doon. So yung second part siguro, sir, nang gusto ko lang sabihin ay tungkol dun sa last two slides ninyo about the current KM4D as well as the future of KM4D. So pinag-iisipan ko, sir, kanina while you were talking, yung idea ng knowledge creation. And nowadays, the terminology that, in the development sector, well, not really in the development sector, but maybe in the academic sector or in the academic community is co-production of knowledge, which is quite different from participatory approaches to development, because in co-production of knowledge, we emphasize transdisciplinary, problem-oriented way of not just integrating knowledge, but also reframing problems, reframing solutions by bringing in different types of knowledges or knowledge systems. So that power of co-producing within the context of, let's say, an innovation platform or a multi-stakeholder platform where we can actually try to interrogate, for example, some development agenda, even the SDGs, for instance, and how it translates into concrete programs, and who are actually benefiting and who's losing from certain dominant technical pathways, and how do we ensure that these programs are inclusive, equitable, sustainable. I think KM4D has the tools and the principles anchored on what you call ontologies of knowledge, so that we would be able to, fine-tune the ways in which we do development. And another thing, sir, that I would like to highlight is the power of KM4D to also somehow engage power holders, or to reframe power, not just knowledge, but to reframe power, who holds power, who has the power to actually decide. I remember Donella Meadows' leverage point framework, or leverage point systems framework. So she calls this 12 places in a complex system to intervene so that we can generate systemic change. And knowledge is one of the deep leverage points, because knowledge is related to our capacity to self-organize, to our capacity, to our rules, to the rules of the system, as well as to the goals of the system. And so it's not just information that we're dealing when we're talking of KM4D. It's really knowledge, which is very much related to those deep leverage points in a complex system. And then, sir, lastly, ayun, gusto ko lang din, sir, i-relate yung na-mention nyo towards the end, that maybe we can also consider learning, the more transformative forms of learning. And I think the ways in which we practice KM, there is always component of this deep kind of learning. Sometimes in the literature, we call it double loop learning, or sometimes triple loop learning, wherein we're asking not just a question, are we doing things right, but also we're asking the question, are we doing the right things, right? So, and so kanina sir, iniisip ko, bakit nga ba yung DevCom 152 and even up to now, medyo ang focus niya sir is on the organizational KM, internal KM. And I feel like, and this is just my theory, and this is something that, we can together co-produce, perhaps one, because of that process of passing or getting this passed through, this stages of curriculum development here in the university. Because we know that we don't want to see so much overlap with our courses. And so some of the things that we might be talking about related to external knowledge sharing or external KM for that matter are very much related to the other DevCom courses as well, right? Whether it's, some theoretical foundations of educational communication, and even participatory communication, etc. But definitely there is something in there that we can still further develop, like in terms of really bridging organizational KM and external KM. I remember when I read your entry to that encyclopedia, I can't remember the title, sir, but definitely the title for your entry is KM4D. You emphasize there that conventional KM focuses on organizational KM, and KM4D focuses on external knowledge sharing. So I just want to mention that because I know that there are a lot of teachers and students present here in our conversation. And maybe they're also taking DevCom 155 or a counterpart KM course in their respective departments and universities. And I want them to, to be empowered to actually explore that side of KM, which I think is quite underdeveloped. So yun lang, sir. Thank you very much.
All points well taken, Winnie. Well done. Very good.
Thank you so much, Sir Winnie. So, okay, now let's hear from our second reactant, Mr. Benedict Juliano. Benedict, or Bimbo Juliano, is currently the manager of the Knowledge Management Content Strategy editorial for the London Stock Exchange Group. He started in this post in February 2023. So recent lang, sir. Previously, he was the unit head at the Southeast Asia Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, or SINIO, CIRCA. Hola.
Yes, so leading the Applied Knowledge Resources Unit, or AKRU, he was entrusted with handling 3 key service lines from 2019 to 2023. This included publications, websites, social media, library, and archives. So he has over 20 years of KM achievement with various global service and support organizations, such as Baker McKenzie Global Services Manila, ANZ Global Services and Operations Manila, IBM Global Process Services, TRN Delivery, Trend Micro, and Global Sourcing.
His hallmark has been enabling the right information to reach the right people at the right time, to make the right decisions or achieve the right outcomes. His competencies include program and project management, business development, leadership and people development, strategic planning and innovation, and multinational and cross-functional collaboration. Sir Benedict, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Alam mo naman ang internet sa Los Baños, you can never tell. All right. So, since everyone kind of started off with their own KM story of how they got into it, I guess I'll start with that. Um, if Dr. Floor's, gateway drug into knowledge management was, I think he mentioned informatization or information and knowledge economics, mine was English technical writing. This is all the way back 2000. I was working in DNR in a development project. The project had ended. I had just gotten married, and my wife had just given birth to our eldest. And they said, Benedict, can you wait 6 months for the next phase of the project to start? And I said, no way. I have to feed my wife and family. So I jumped to corporate. My ambitions of having a development project career, I left it behind because I need to provide for family. And sometime during my technical writing days in Trend Micro, this is an antivirus company, or now it's called the information security or internet security company based here in Manila. Um, that's where my German boss wrote on a piece of tissue while we're having drinks at the bar. Germans like to have drinks after work. He wrote down knowledge management and he said, "This is actually what you do." And that was my introduction to knowledge management. Um, I found myself in Circa right before the pandemic, Simeo Circa. For those of you in Los Baños, you always call it the building with all the flags leading up to the, I guess we now have to call it the Chancellor's office and not the library, because during my time in UPLB as a student, it was the library. So while at Circa, you can never escape the shadow of knowledge management left behind by Dr. Floor. I read actually his eDev and KM book when I arrived. In fact, the reason I joined Circa was because they had a knowledge management department. However, Circa has shifted gears recently with their 11th five-year plan, and the knowledge management department has been replaced by the emerging innovation for growth department. The idea there is Circa will always be a knowledge organization. The functions are all still there, the training, publications, advocacy. But they wanted a department that would focus on agricultural innovation, incubation. If you have a idea to use a drone for something to improve productivity or yield, that's the department that will help you organize or fund it. So the shift in focus to allow more, I guess, growth or opportunities for the center to expand. I also noted that Dr. Flor and I have almost the same length of tenure in Circa. It seems KM people just don't stay in the same place for a long time. And yes, sorry, Dr. Flor, I was not able to inform you prior to this that I had left Circa in February. I moved back to corporate. Uh, and I think I'm probably going to stay in corporate. I'm more of a corporate guy than a dev guy. But I still think I'm very lucky to have the perspective of both the development and the corporate side for KM, and I'm open to help to continue, as you call it, this Los Baños brand of knowledge management, because I guess, yeah, it is around this area that you hear a lot of emphasis on it, not in other places, at least in academic circles in the Philippines. So kind of keen to see it continue, even though I am not exactly in that realm, but I am at least appreciative of the work that has been put into it. Okay, let's see. On with the reactions. So I guess my main reaction is uh, I'm not so just to give the audience perspective, my knowledge management exposure is mostly corporate. So it is KM for profit. It's meant to increase profit, increase revenue, faster speed, higher customer service, all those, the things that you hear corporations do. And the focus has mostly been on service. So either HR, technical support, frontline call centers, all that. I've done a little bit of those all over. And um, I don't, I really don't want the discussion to always devolve into corporate versus development. I'm a fan of both, I guess, because I've seen both. So I don't like it when the conversation goes to versus, right? Corporate versus development, or this is better than the other. It's all knowledge management in the end. So for me, from what I'm seeing, and even given my time in Circa, I really got my eyes opened about a lot of things, knowledge management wise. I think although Dr. Floor highlighted there's lots of discussion or debate around knowledge creation, I would like to introduce a different way of looking at this. Maybe we need to go back to um, I think it was Franklin Covey, right? The 7 habits of highly effective people. So lesson number two there is, or the habit number two is begin with the end in mind. So you never do a knowledge management initiative, project, or any kind of managing knowledge activity without thinking of what are you going to achieve. So for corporations, it's very easy, right? They want higher customer satisfaction, faster speed, more profit. They already have the end in mind. For development organizations like Circa, for example, they could never really tell me what the exact end product is. Yes, you want better, more productive farmers, better agriculture, but that's that's not a precise target. That's not something easy to sell. So I mean, I remember he said that investment or funding is decreasing in information systems and databases in the development sector. That's probably because there's no material achievement or a significant contribution that has happened after all the money has been spent. I mean, let's all be very, very let's open our eyes, regardless of whether you are in corporate or the development world or even academia. There is a return on investment in mind for all the activities that you do, including knowledge management. So for me, what really is the value? I'll give you a very good example. So Dr. Floor mentioned in his slides about capturing and managing indigenous and local knowledge. So maybe the one that most people will know is the old girl who was the old lady who was featured in the magazine cover, si Wang Ot, right? She's able to do the tattoos. She's the only one who knows how to do it, right? Okay, so let's say somebody, a development organization, say USAID or something, throws money to capture that knowledge, right, for future generations. So 5 years down the road, say when they run out of funds, they're going to say, okay, what's the value? What's the impact? Okay, lots of people are happy. There's lots of social media posts that I got my tattoo like Wang Od, blah 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 blah. Yeah, but what do we have to show for all the money, effort, personnel hired, all that? If that's not clear, they're gonna pull the plug, right? So same thing with corporate. If I'm hired to do a knowledge management activity and I don't meet the goal or I'm not close to where they need it to be, they're gonna fire my team. So for me, I could care less about who creates the knowledge. What I'm looking at is we're exerting all this effort to manage the knowledge. What are we going to use it for? Now, there is a golden opportunity here because we now have the sustainable development goals. So if you're in the development space and you're in a knowledge management position, you just need to find a way that your knowledge management activities will actually contribute something material to the SDGs, that will be a very, very tangible, uh, what do you call it, achievement or impact that can be sold to a funding agency, right? Because, no matter what you say about, international funding agencies, they all still look at what is the impact, what is the contribution. They're not just looking at how much, high profile the project will be to bring them over success. They're also looking at when the money runs out, will the impact or the contribution still be there, right? Because if you did the project to uplift the income of farmers in say a certain barangay, you want that 5 years later when you come back, the farmers are still doing well, right? So in KM, it's the same. If they invest money in like an information database, there's a lot. When I was in Circa, that was all the rage of the discussion. We have all these development projects. There's all this data being generated by these projects. The funders usually want the data to be theirs, right? They own it because they funded the project. So what if we could get all these funders to allow the data to be shared so that additional analysis could be done and all that? So that was the discussion. And of course, that's like a knowledge management initiative to share your research data, your raw data, so that others can carry on your analysis or your work. So of course, the I was bringing up that, okay, so if you share it, what's the benefit? Because if Circa shares its raw data and say the university of such and such publishes a paper about it, but this doesn't give credit to Circa, then where's the ROI, right? Where's the so we had all those discussions because in the end, there is a cost to managing and sharing knowledge, and so your organization has to be aware of how can it benefit or the revenue, not necessarily in money terms, but that's the kind of conversations you should be having. And I think that's actually a missing piece in the KM4D of where can it how can it thrive or how can it sustain itself, because it's all well and good, but in corporate world, when you're talking to other KM practitioners, the emphasis is always, it's not the length of time you've been in the KM role, it's not your position, it's not, ang yabangan namin is anong nagawa mo recently and how much did it help the company. Because if you've helped if your KM has helped generate millions in cost savings or additional revenue to the company, that's more impressive than 100,000 or less, right? So it's ROI in corporate. I would think if there was an application for KM4D that has a tangible impact, maybe farmers' incomes raised by this much percent, or I don't know, damage from typhoon to crops lessened by X percent. It's all money. People understand money. The point lang is, uh, you always have to have what is your success measure once your effort is done. That's it. I'm not saying to change the course, but you really need to probably consider or begin with the end in mind. Now, there's a lot of next point is Dr. Floor mentioned web paradigm shifts. So there's a lot of discussion right now in corporate regarding ChatGPT and AI. I actually need to correct the conventional KM versus the KM4D, because I think it was mentioned one or two times that KM for corporations is internal. That's actually not true. KM for corporations, at least the ones that are being done here in the Philippines, is actually for external, meaning the end customer. Why? Because, for example, if you have a problem with your PLDT internet or maybe your Globe phone, and you call the call center, the agent is actually reading the script and the answers to your questions from a knowledge management system that the company maintains. So the KM is not just for the benefit of the internal customer, meaning the call center agent talking to you, but you as an external person are benefiting from their knowledge management initiative. Ngayon, lots of discussion about AI, ChatGPT. Well, there's like the three P's, letter P as in Poseidon. Uh, the three P's of knowledge management are people, process, and platform. AI is just the platform. So overemphasizing or putting too much stock in one of the three P's is not sustainable. So there's they were saying, oh, you just hook up ChatGPT to our knowledge base and it will answer questions already. We'll have our own Siri or we'll have our own Alexa, right? You just ask it a question and it will answer. No, sorry. So from what I've seen in London Stock Exchange Group, which I just joined, the AI has to be taught like it's a little, think of it like a toddler or a baby. It has to learn to walk first before it can run. It's not a plug and play experience with artificial intelligence. So what we did was it was first fed 30 questions and answers that the call center will get. And based on those 30 questions, when it's able to answer all of those consistently, that's when you actually add more knowledge into the AI. So it has to learn to answer the first 30 questions well muna. So I was fascinated actually. I actually thought you just hook up the AI and it's done. No. I was told the technical guys took me aside and they showed me the schematics. And the funny thing is it's actually three AIs. I think ChatGPT is two AIs working together. One is the language module, the one that can understand what you are typing, or the one that makes you feel like you're talking to a real person. That's one part. The other part is actually the one that handles all the information, the one that acts like Google to search through all of the content. So anyway, just to close on this part, lots of talk in my KM corporate network about AI will replace us or all that, and our 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 answer is the same. Knowledge management needs people, process, and platform. So you still need the people, which means you could call it community of practice or your experts. You still need the people and their expertise, right? You also need the process. So I guess this is where the knowledge capture, the creation, curation, all of that has to be in place. In the end, if it's garbage in, it's garbage out for the AI. So you still need the person. In fact, even with ChatGPT, right? I have a friend in advertising. She said she got she cut her social media staff in half. You know why? One of her staff in the social media team figured out that you can just ask ChatGPT. So for example, they need taglines for Tanduay and their new product. They ask ChatGPT to generate the taglines, and ChatGPT will come up with it. And they just have to review. A human has to review the output. But see, you don't need an actual human. She cut her staff in half. So that's just one story from the industry about how disruptive the platform is. However, they still need the person to actually review it. What's scary is, I guess, 10 years from now, when they've cleaned up all the kinks, is when you're looking at a situation where uh, what are you going to do, right? What kind of job will you have? Because they're also going to improve the cognition, the way it understands human speech or human communication. The translation is already also there. So in LSEG, they're getting another AI. So besides the AI that will understand how you talk or you chat, you have the AI who will Google. They're getting a third AI who will actually translate. So uh, you don't have to translate. You don't need translators anymore. You know, when you look at JobStreet or LinkedIn, there's lots of job openings for Chinese speaking, Spanish speaking. You don't need that anymore once you have the AI that can do it, right? But I digress. I still believe that yes, there is room for KM4D. It is one of the ways that development organizations can make sure that their efforts and output are passed on to the next generation or are appreciated. Um, Circa does it mostly through its publications, for example, but increasingly we are banking on digital media. So like this, you're recording this masterclass. That's part of knowledge capture and curation. And of course, social media. You may laugh at social media, but easily as early as 2018, 2017, a lot of development organizations would scoff at having a Facebook page. But now they can't because without Facebook, you would have died during the COVID pandemic. Actually, that's the secret to why Circa was so relevant and active during the COVID pandemic. It's because we invested in social media. The director Glenn Gregorio at the time was very supportive, and it is a knowledge management tool or channel because awareness is part of knowledge, right? Yeah, you don't have to be an expert, but at least you know what's going on in our space. So I think that's pretty much it. I guess I should end with there are careers in knowledge management in the Philippines. The outsourcing industry has most of these positions. There are positions in government that are KM related, but they kind of need to focus on what their end goal is. So for DevCom students, since you have KM as one of your courses, yeah, I mean, if this is what interests you, you can definitely have a career in this, whether in the development or the corporate sector. So good afternoon and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for your insights, Sir Benedict. Sir Sandy, would you like to say something?
Oh yeah, definitely. We're thanking Winnie and Bimbo for their inputs on KM4D. With regard to Winnie's reaction, I think much of what he's suggesting should be incorporated in a new course, such as the co-production of knowledge. That's a very interesting concept that would deserve a course in itself, which may be a follow-through to KM4D of the College of Development Communication. Now, insofar as the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies is concerned, if BAMS or DCOM would be interested in new courses, then perhaps we could request Winnie to develop a course for us and for him to teach it in the future, right? Si Bimbo mentioned a number of things, all very valid. The concern for attribution to KM efforts within any organization, be it public, private, or development, international, national, or regional, is always a concern. And this is the reason why we are incorporating monitoring and evaluation for specifically for projects. We need theories of change where outputs and outcomes could be plotted and indicators for all of these are identified. They may not necessarily be monetary indicators, but concrete nevertheless, as it is a requirement among funding agencies to have M&E components. Nowadays, they call it MeAL, or monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. And in the case of the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, for instance, we are in the process of developing the M&E framework for their knowledge management team or their knowledge management plan, which should be aligned with, as Bimbo mentioned, the outcomes stated in the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's good that we have this targeting or this perspective, that all of these things should be aligned. It is very difficult to attribute non-material or it is very difficult to make use of non-material indicators of success. But that is one of the complexities of the development sector. As I said, it's really very easy within a corporation or a profit-making company. The bottom line is profit, and it's easy to attribute increase in profit to certain actions that could be linked to knowledge interventions. Okay, in the development sector, it's an entirely different environment. So yes, exactly. The points raised by Bimbo are all very important. With regard to AI, the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, in collaboration with the Multimedia Center, and also this is an initiative of Dean Dagi, is currently featuring a series of episodes on artificial intelligence, ChatGPT in particular. Bimbo's points are very well taken. AI is not a panacea, or it is not something magical. It requires feedback in order to establish feed-forward actions. Yesterday was the second episode of the Open Talk series on artificial intelligence, and I made a point in yesterday's Open Talk that computers, they compute, but computers cannot think. The faculty of thinking is still reserved to us. And although the new AI programs that we have nowadays could simulate creativity, right? Such as Midjourney or ChatGPT itself, it could compose poems or even write a thesis. All of these are based on previous actions or behaviors or of humans, but they cannot conceptualize. There is no such thing as conceptualization or abstracting. Conceptualizing at a higher level of abstraction. This metacognition barrier between AI and humans has not yet been reached. But again, it was pointed out that given maybe 10 years or so, there may be a possibility that will indeed be breached, and consider the implications on your jobs. For me, maybe I shouldn't worry about it because I'll be retiring soon, but consider the implications. In yesterday's conversation, I pointed out that if artificial intelligence and quantum computing, two disruptors, are combined, then we are really in for a mega disruption. Okay, quantum computers are several times faster, hundreds of times faster than the human brain. Okay, so that said, thank you very much to both of you, Bimbo and Winnie. and we're expecting better versions of KM4D curricula that will result in this interaction. No, thank you very much, Ems.
Salamat po, Sir Sandy. So we now open the floor for any further questions from the audience. Do we have questions? Anyone? Okay, so no questions. I'm checking the FB page. So no questions as well. So I think we have to, okay, for a while there is a chat. Okay, Father Rojan commented KM for corporate profit can be neutralized, balanced, bridged, perhaps even masked, and masked by CSR.
See, Father Rojan is now he's now Dr. Father Rojan Ramirez, and he is part of our DCOM faculty. He is handling a course on process sociology, and he has developed a course on iconologies of communication. I'm sorry, Father, I forgot. No. But look, I'm sorry to have made this impression that KM for the corporation is negative. No, we can trace the development or the origins of knowledge management within the corporate sector, and we are thankful for that. We are not saying that it is negative, that it should be neutralized, balanced, or bridge, masked, or masked. No such thing. I mean, it's for its particular context, it is useful and required, considering our current, our current information or knowledge economics. No, we're not saying that it's bad, but we're just saying that it's different from how we should apply, how we should manage knowledge within our context of development or public service. But thank you nevertheless, Father.
Yeah, if I can just add.
Yes, please po.
Yeah, if I can just add to what Dr. Flor said. So it's possible that any profit, although usually it's cost savings or things like you don't have to hire more people, you just maintain your call center because you don't have to grow it because you have less calls because of better knowledge management. But normally any gains from knowledge management from corporate are just fueled back into more knowledge management activities. So they'll invest into more knowledge systems because they see the value, they saw the ROI. So not necessarily that just because you save money with knowledge management, you'll do a CSR. No, what they'll do is actually they'll put more money in KM rather than maybe sales or marketing, or maybe instead of R&D, it will go into knowledge management. That's normally what happens when knowledge management is able to prove that it has an ROI in corporate. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sir Bimbo. Anyone else who want to comment or say something?
So just to add again, sorry, but same. So with KM4D, if your project was able to prove that you increased farmers' income, you increased their livelihood, then your funding agency will be more likely to give you more funding or extend the project, right? So same thing. It like as Dr. Flor said, it's all knowledge management. It just gets a bad connotation when it's corporate because you think it's all greedy corporate, things. But it is basically what value does the tool bring to solving a problem. I mean, I always when they ask me what do I do for a living, and I say knowledge management, and they say what is that? What the hell is that? And I just say it's a tool for solving problems. Knowledge management is a tool or approach for solving problems. So, it has to be effective, right? For it to be invested in or used as a tool. And it depends on how the organization wants to leverage it, or how much does it want to invest in it. And that's why, the ROI, or the end in mind, is always important.
Okay, thank you again, Sir Bimbo. Anyone else? Sir Winnie, would you like to add something?
Hi, Ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm just thinking along the lines, not necessarily about the comment on CSR, but more on the kind of KM that we do in development sector. And a lot of things that we also do, which are related to KM, are not necessarily those processes fitting into those, neat boxes of this linear KM model, like from knowledge creation to storage and retrieval, access, utilization, but also more on how we also link different kinds of stakeholders and people, and trying to design ways in which they come up with new ideas. They become more creative. They plan together. I think there's also a part of KM4D that can contribute a lot to that kind of agenda. And a lot of times it's difficult to measure those very intangible outcomes regarding, people's ability to become more innovative, creative, confident, for them to open up. Well, how do you measure organizational culture, for instance, and how it evolves? Okay, the organizational culture for knowledge sharing, for instance. So we also need to improve our tools, our tools for evaluation, our frameworks for evaluation. We don't have to close down on more intangible kinds of indicators, and just to focus our metrics on those that are very easily measurable. So yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Winnie. Sir Sandy?
Oo, tama si Winnie doon sa ganun. Alam nyo yung, hindi ba, I presented the slide that listed competencies, no? Yung palagay namin yung mga bagong competencies ng a KM4D practitioner. And I've mentioned to our colleagues sa ASEAN Center for Biodiversity na in this set of competencies, the most important one, the most significant one for me is knowledge networking. What Winnie described to me is part of knowledge networking. We haven't really explored this area much, in our KM research. Mabuti si EMS nagkaroon ng thesis on knowledge capture eh. Pero tayo ba, meron ba tayong thesis sa DCOM or sa MDC dealing with this, or kahit na sa sa College of Development Communication? Tatanungin ko si Dr. Benj. Mukhang wala eh. Kasi matagal na nating sinasabi, napaka-importante ng networking, kasi networking is the structure of all living things. Or networks are the structure of all living things. And we could just imagine the implication of that definition. Look, how do we measure it? How do we measure the outcomes of networking in real terms? There were several papers that came out years back in 2004. For instance, yung paper na social capital and the network effect, alluding to the network principle of sino nga ito, the person who developed the local area network na yeah, well, his name escapes me. But you could measure the outcome of networking through social capital, which many sectors consider social capital, the real social capital, can be stated in monetary terms. Diba? Anong social capital ang na-gain sa isang community of practice, for instance, and it could have a monetary measure. So it's similar to the ROI concept that Bimbo introduced. But yeah, ang pinakapunto rin nga natin sa private sector, okay talaga yung ROI and so on. And that's the way things are. Yun na yung kalakaran eh. Sa atin, we need to have more innovative measures, indicators that are concrete, also as concrete as this, and can be attributed to our KM interventions. Yun ang medyo difficulty because KM knowledge is ephemeral. It is not something that you could package and observe as an intervention. And when it operates in the field, madami ng kaakibat na sa mismong phenomena. No. Yun yung mga difficulties that we encounter, and so we need to research in this area all the more. But I'm sure that those who will be bearing the torch in the future will eventually develop more sensitive measures and more effective ways for evaluation. Thanks, Winnie.
Thank you. Thank you po, Sir Sandy.
Ems, is it okay to address the chat?
Okay.
Stuff in the chat?
Sige, Sir Bimbo.
Because Dr. Rojan is saying here about human development supposed to be shareable to all, not amassable by the few. So I guess I'll answer by telling you a story from Circa, because it kind of shocked me how, it sounds so easy, but it's actually very difficult. So we were trying to profile, or I guess there have been several studies of profiles of farmers in the Philippines, right? The DepEd secretary, which is where Circa actually rolls up to, you'd be surprised, right? Circa is supposed to be for agri and development, but it goes to DepEd because that's just the way it's set up. Our mother institution is the Southeast Asian's Ministers of Education organization. So at the time, it was still geez, I see her face in my head, but I forget her name now. Before VP Sara, Leonor Briones. So Leonor Briones said, no one wants to get into agriculture anymore. Our farmers are all 50 years old. They're all still using, the majority, especially those in the province. I'm not talking about the ones you see in Calauan or here in Laguna. You go all the way, say, to Bicol, Bohol, or any of those far off places, really an hour's drive at least from a city center or a town center. These farmers are still farming like it's 1930, 1920. Yung tinuro ni lolo kay tatay at yung tinuro ni tatay sa akin. It's very difficult to share knowledge with them and new technology because that's all they know. How do you bring a tractor to a place where you need to cross 3 streams na yung bridge ay isang tao lang ang kasya? Stuff like that. How do you bring yung produce, yung naani na nila, na kalamansi, down to the main road? Because There's just so many challenges. So this is the part where you realize that the Philippines being comprised of, ano nga ba, how does it go? 7,100 islands. That's actually a very big challenge to overcome in terms of knowledge sharing and enabling the farmer to use new technology. It's just mind-boggling for me. I mean, even if you drive to, say, Mayon volcano, you will see the farmers are still using the same techniques as if you got into a time machine and went back to 1950, because that's all they can afford, that's all they can do, and the solution is so multifaceted. Yes, you can. So, for example, Circa has we've developed, or the Circa has developed an open source tractor, meaning if you buy a commercial tractor, you're looking at least 2 million or more. This tractor will only cost about 500,000. So affordable, right? But now comes the problem. How do you get the funding? So you need to be organized as a as a farmer group or cooperative. That's not easy for farmers to do, especially if you're scattered, right? So those types of of roadblocks come up. And so knowledge sharing is really, really very important. The idea is always you do a development project in a target community, and if it works, you right you apply it to the neighboring communities and try to expand and multiply, get a multiplier effect from the gains. But it really is a very, very difficult uh, undertaking, and the human development part is really difficult, especially when all the farmers will tell their kids, "Don't be like me. You study, you go to the city." So you know, I am all for the development of Philippine agriculture and rural areas, but I don't envy the people who have to deal with the whole thing, because it can really get, when you're on the ground and you're actually dealing with the actual end user, you will realize just how difficult. Of course, it also means that when you're able to improve their livelihood, because we had a project where the farmers were able to bypass the traders to sell their vegetables in, I think, as close as Liliu, we have a site there. Nakita nung team, when they came back, maayos na raw yung damit, meron na raw owner na jeep na nakapark, meron na raw karaoke machine with flat screen TV, kasi they have more income now. So it's very satisfying when you're able to. So, but of course, the next question was, can we sustain? Because there was a captive market when we started that program because of COVID, but they were saying, yeah, the demand for buying online for those vegetables actually decreased when we kind of opened up. We're in the post-COVID period now, so those are the types of things that when you're working in the development or sustainable areas, it becomes a concern. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Sir Bimbo. So many things to think about. But anyway, Sir Sandy, may mga comments dito sa FB from Miel M. Hontukan. Thank you, Dr. Sandy, for the lecture. I have incorporated KM in my master's thesis last semester. From Brian Rialgo, KM4D for intangible cultural heritage will also be interesting to explore. And may question tayo dito sa Zoom, Sir Sandy. Have you seen this? Just want to ask what Mr. Floor's response is about DevCom being labeled as archaic by Senator Amy Marcos. The question is from Sir Alfredo Arsenio IV.
Okay. As archaic as Senator Amy Marcos and myself, yeah, we're of the same age eh. Si Senator Amy. Siguro matanda lang ako ng dalawang paligo, gano'n, no? Pero no, this discussion about DevCom being labeled as such, this is reserved for another time and place, not for this. No, not for this. Okay, thank you very much, Miel and Brian. no, for bringing these up yung mga comments nyo.
Okay, thank you, sir. So another comment from an audience. KM is a great concept and is applicable for all discipline. This may be applied in both qualitative and quantitative aspects of or knowledge. It is already been exercised even before, but maybe in different terms or approach. This can also be all applied to business, academia, government, etc., especially in decision-making and improving services growth and outcomes. Any other comments from our audience?
Si Winnie may sasabihin.
Sir Winnie, please do.
Hi, sir. Ma'am M, sorry. Ma'am M. Yeah, gusto ko lang pong sabihin na like nung time na may gap kasi yung offering namin ng DevCom 155. So we went into a generalist track of curriculum here in DevCom. And maybe that was around 2014 or 2015 or 2016. And so naiwan yung KM, hindi namin siya na-offer. And eventually, na-elevate yung 152, na-revise and improve, and they offer ulit. But what's interesting is that I got feedback from a friend of mine working for a big development organization. And he said that during the time na hindi kami nag-offer ng KM, nahihirapan daw silang maghanap ng mga graduates na may training on KM4D. Mainly because kukonti naman yung mga education institutions that are actually offering formal courses or training on KM. And many of the so-called like KM officers, sometimes they came from Sir Appin's certification course, and that's it. But they don't have like this formal training like from the university. So yun, just to emphasize the importance of KM as well in the industry, both private as well as public sector. So importante yung training and higher education on KM. So hopefully maraming mga kasama natin dito na nasa HEIs ang mag-explore ng mga possibilities on how we can actually develop curriculum on KM4D. And then this is Sir Sandy at myself as well to help you in any case kasi nasa UP naman tayo. So yeah, tulungan. Thank you.
Winnie, ang alam ko, required course ng CHED. Sa kung yung which particular program, kung development communication lang or sa the other communication programs. But kasi pandemic na noon, we Apin and I were still being invited by PACE to talk about this particular requirement. Kaya lang siguro yung the course that they're offering, the content that they're offering was mga circa 1998, yung mga sinauna nating or mga 2004 nga sa AIJC. Yeah. Maybe the graduates of communication programs offering knowledge management, just knowledge management, are not very interested in working in the government or development sectors. Wala mga applications ganun. But I know that it's still a required course, and as of course, CHED has changed this, it has changed this. But that's it.
Thank you, sir, for clarifying.
Look, Winnie, if I were you, and if I were you guys sa science communication, sa DevCom, offer not just one course, but a series of courses. And then you could share that course with us, and Ems will hire you as a lecturer in her BAMS program. Ang daming possibilities.
Yeah. By the way, Sir Bimbo, I would also love to invite KM persons like you from the private sector to also be part of our classes in future course offerings. Yeah. Importante rin
actually,
po yung importante yung ganyang perspective mo sa KM4D. Thank you.
At
yeah, and
saka,
I can get other people actually, not just me. Kasi
Right.
a lot of people in corporate KM actually want to give back. Meaning, ano sila eh, they want to share what they know to the next generation. It's like a stealth career eh. Parang wala masyadong. If you look for KM on LinkedIn, there's not so many people who. Pero the number is growing eh. So I think because multinational corporations all have a KM function, I guess. Even our local, I mean, even GCash actually has a knowledge management function. Would you believe it?
Really?
Yeah. So
another clarification is that there's definitely nothing wrong with a PINS certification course.
Yes, of course.
Pang private, parang hindi lang siya akma dun sa ibang mga development agencies that, let's say, involved in climate change or where the approach is sectoral or thematic. And definitely the tools that you need there would be more sophisticated.
yeah, I should get a referral fee actually from Appin already. I've pushed too many people to take his course already. I should ask him about that.
Even my co-faculty members here have actually taken that course.
Okay po, I think that's it. Sir Sandy, anything else you want to say?
Wala na po, overtime na nga po ata tayo.
Okay, sige. But before we close, syempre, we will not forget awarding of certificates. Pao?
Yes po. So we would like to present the certificate of appreciation to Assistant Professor Winifredo B. Dagli. So allow me to read the certification, sir. So this is awarded to Assistant Professor Winifredo B. Dagli for his invaluable contribution as reactant during the FICS Masterclass on KM4D Revisited, Backstories on the Banos brand of knowledge management, live streamed on 14 April 2023 via networks.tpou.edu.ph. Maraming salamat po, Sir Winnie.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Maraming salamat sa inyo and congrats for this wonderful event.
Maraming salamat, Sir Winnie. Alam ko, busy-busy ka. Hinahabol ang manuscript mo. Good luck, Dr. Winnie.
Oo. Thank you. Malakas sa akin si Sir Sandy. Kaya hindi ako makakano sa kanya.
Nagkikita pa tayo, ha?
Oh.
Pao?
So moving on po. Next to be Mr. Benedict A. Juliano. So this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Mr. Benedict A. Juliano for his invaluable contribution as reactant during the FICS Masterclass on KM4D Revisited, Backstories on the Banos brand of knowledge management, live streamed on 14 April 2023 via networks.tpou.edu.ph. Maraming salamat po, Sir Benedict.
Thank you, and you're very welcome. Even though I'm no longer connected to Circa, I'm still open for any knowledge management opportunities that the OpenU or even Dr. Flor may want. Dr. Flor, maybe you'd like to update the conventional versus K4D1. We could write a policy paper.
Yun na nga eh. Oo, it really needs updating. So these days, I'll write you an email with a proposed outline. Ano?
Sure. I mean, I could also ask Circa if they're interested to co-publish. But
okay. Sige.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Sir Benedict.
Welcome.
So, for the last, but not the least, Dr. Alexander Flor. So this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Alexander G. Flor for his invaluable contribution as thought leader during the FICS Masterclass on KM4D Revisited, Backstories on the Banos brand of knowledge management, live streamed on 14 April 2023 via networks.upu.edu.ph. Maraming salamat po, Dr.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat kay EMS, kay sa Yopaw, sa FICS staff who worked behind the scenes. Thank you to Winnie. Thank you to Bimbo. Thank you to our audience here in Facebook Live, sa networks, at saka dito sa Zoom.
Maraming salamat. Huwag muna kayong aalas kasi meron pa tayong photo op later on. So at this point, let me acknowledge the people behind the scenes. Syempre from FICS, so si Pat as usual served as our overall event coordinator. So teacher niya pala si Sir Winnie, as she leads the group in the conduct of this event. So maraming salamat Pat, Gian, Pau, Ariel, Maine, Gemma, Daniel, Jenny, and Rachel. And of course from UPOU CODTL, Educational Media Production Team, maraming salamat po Sir Baggy, Sir Angelo, Direct Lex, Sir Alex, and Alan, and Ama. Pau?
So, for our participants, please let us know how we did and help us improve the conduct of future events. So kindly evaluate na lang po through the site indicated on the screen or by scanning the QR code. And then reminder po na yung evaluation form natin will be open and available until 5 p.m. ng Monday, April 17. And then for your certificates of participation, automatically po na masasend na po ito sa inyo given that you accomplished the evaluation form and were able to answer at least 3 out of the 5 questions correctly. And then, dahil po marami po tayong participants, so there may be some delays in processing your certificates. Bigyan niyo lang po kami ng 3 working days before you follow up, but we will make sure to respond within 3 business days. And lastly, for future FICS Masterclass lectures and other FICS events, please follow and like our Facebook page, UPOU FICS.
Okay, malinaw na malinaw ang instructions ni Pau, So Sir Sandy shared with us all the important details, the history of KM4D, the KMLB. Sir Winnie shared the new concepts such as co-production of knowledge, power of KM4D, and deep kind of learning. Sir Bimbo focused on KM in the corporate world. He believes that it doesn't matter who creates the knowledge. What is more important is why we are doing all this. With all this, let's go back to Sir Sandy's question. Ano ba yung tanong niya kanina? Knowledge management in Los Baños? Who will bear the torch? The challenge, I believe, is put upon all of us who are here. Tama ba, Sir Sandy? All of us who realized in one way or another how important it is to capture knowledge. So
Andiyan na si Winnie, andiyan na si Ems, andiyan na si Bia. Andiyan na kayo
lahat tayo, so that it can be shared and reused so we can achieve sustainability and development. And that ends our session for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us in this event. So next time ulit, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Pero syempre, photo op muna, di ba, Pat? Before we go, please open your videos. May kumukuha ba ng photos natin, Pat?
Salamat, Jerry. Salamat.
Sarap mag-smile. We have 3 slides actually. Smile.
Yes po. Pa-smile lang po. May 3 pages po tayo.
3 pages.
Hindi nakabukas si Errol. Hindi nakabukas. Si Alex. Hindi rin.
Basta si Sir Sandy ang ating thought leader. Ang dami nating participants.
Please share the photos. Kahit sa FB nyo na lang, share na lang.
Yes, we will po, Sir. Sir Winnie, Sir Bimbo, we will see you again,
Sure, just let me know. Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much po. Thank you so much, everyone. Sir Jerry, thank you so much.